Thanks to the release of its special edition, I've been pondering the implications of Devil May Cry 5's story and what it means for the claims I made in Devil May Cry's Deeper Than You Think. The only thing I think doesn't necessarily hold up post 5 is the assertion that Virgil's rejection of his humanity is motivated by his inference that it's a weakness that stopped him from saving his mother, as 5 seems to go for the idea that he thinks his mother abandoned him to save Dante until Dante tells him, "No idiot, she died trying to find you." But to be fair, we really only have Dante's assertion of this as evidence, since when he says this to Urizen, the latter claims to have no memory of that day, and Dante never brings it up again. So just as Virgil may have misunderstood Eva's actions, Dante may have misunderstood Virgil's motivations. But still, when a viewpoint is presented in a story and there's nothing to challenge it, it's usually the writers establishing that as being the case. After all, it's the only reasonable way to convey the author's intent without omnipotent narration. So this is probably meant to be taken as fact, but there's still room for us to ignore it for our own interpretations of the story. One of the primary claims I made last time is that humanity is the power that enabled Dante to defeat Virgil for the first time in DMC 3. Virgil's folly was his inability to see that, believing it to be a weakness to be cast aside. And even now, over 2 decades later, he is still making that same mistake, casting aside his humanity in a very literal sense this time, creating V while he becomes a being of pure, single-minded lust for power. It's hard to say whether Virgil gained any wisdom from his time as V, who did realise Virgil's folly by the time he became one with Urizen again, and it's hard to say if anything of V really survived the merger back into Virgil. Virgil thanks Nero, but that could simply be for helping V to reach Urizen and ensure Virgil's restoration. After all, when Nero arrives with his own Devil Trigger, Virgil is totally confused by this new power. Despite everything V experiences, Virgil still seems oblivious, believing that the Qliphotep fruit is all he needs. This is highlighted quite effectively by the game's soundtrack. In Virgil's theme, Bury the Light, the music accompanying the line has shades of the chords accompanying from Nero's theme, Devil Trigger. This is clearly an intentional decision made by the musicians to highlight, via contrast, Virgil's continued folly as he rejects his inner light, humanity, while Nero is, for the first time, embracing the darkness, demonic power, that's within him. See, Nero has done something that no other character in the series has before now. Use his humanity to awaken and fuel his devil powers. Dante and Virgil awoke to their demonic powers purely to survive and help in their selfish goals. Sparda, Trish and Lucia already had their powers before having their heroic awakenings. But Nero's Devil Trigger is fueled by his humanity, his heroic desire to stop his father and uncle from killing each other. This isn't simply demonic power serving a noble goal, it's the two sides of a person acting in a more intimate unison than anyone else has achieved, and that could well be the reason Nero was able to take down Virgil in the game's climax when even Dante could not. Given all my postulation across these 2 videos regarding the strength humanity offers when embraced and not rejected, one might ask why Dante is unable to defeat Virgil now. While it could be as simple as Virgil being restored in his prime while Dante's gotten older, I think it runs a little deeper than that. For one, Virgil's singular devil form is depicted as being on par, at least, with Dante's Sin Devil Trigger, so it's definitely down to their powers more so than age. Virgil did gain a significant boost from the Qliphotep fruit, and that could well be it. It's probably also worth noting that, ironically, the fruit was ripened by the blood of humans, so Virgil may have unwittingly found the key to greater power while remaining totally oblivious to that fact. But just because humanity is a great strength doesn't mean it's the ultimate strength. The ultimate strength is not simply having multiple types of power, it's unifying those sources into one through self-actualization. Fans of Persona 4 may see where this is going to some extent, which is certainly fitting for a silver-haired shonen hero voiced by Johnny Young Bosch. Nero's lack of personal Devil Trigger before this point could suggest that he's always rejected his demonic side as Dante had. We see him attempting to hide his Devil Bringer around Kyrie multiple times in DMC 4 after all. This makes sense given that he grew up surrounded by an organisation of devil hunters in a highly religious city. One could probably read deeper into that Nero grew up in a religious environment that forced him to suppress and hide a part of himself, and it's only through acceptance from his girlfriend and uncle that he's able to truly be himself, but that's a whole other can of worms that I really don't want to get into. He originally only utilised his arm, the one part of this power he couldn't hide, and then he borrowed Virgil's power, and then after losing that, Nico's. After his pep talk with Kyrie at the end of DMC 5, Nero finally finds his own power inside, discarding the power he borrowed from Nico as he intervenes in the brothers' feud with his own 2 hands. Dante has strengthened his own demonic side, Virgil has exponentially strengthened his, and Nero has intertwined his with his humanity. That's why Nero has more power than Virgil, who just does not understand. Virgil's kind of an idiot. The general view is that Virgil is smarter than Dante, but Dante worked this stuff out when he was like 19, while Virgil's like 45 and still can't wrap his head around it. But all is not lost for our dear poetry reading candidate for Worst Father of 2019. A common interpretation of the series' overarching story is that Dante becomes depressed after losing Virgil in DMC 3, which gets worse when he learns what became of his brother in 1, stays that way through the anime in 2, and then he starts to lighten up once he meets Nero in 4, and he can kind of relive the good old days of fighting Virgil through the teen he believes to be his brother's son. This goes some way to explain why Dante is far less quippy in DMC 1 and especially the anime in 2 compared to 3 and 4. This also explains why Dante is so reluctant to let Nero help him in 5. Not only because of his initial handicap or because he doesn't think Nero can handle fighting his own father, seriously, what even was that whole idea? But because he doesn't want to lose him like he lost Virgil, especially since he likely thinks he's going to have to put Virgil down for good this time. Nero lacks most of this context, so he takes Dante's words at face value when he calls his nephew dead weight. In truth, it's just what Dante thinks will make Nero leave and stay away. But instead, this lights a fire inside Nero and compels him to prove he can keep up with the Sons of Sparda, which is ultimately proven right. Combine this with Dante and Virgil's clash spurring Nero into awakening his devil trigger, and Dante's role as the mentor to other heroes that we saw in 2 and 4 reaches its climax. He's now managed to prepare a successor who can continue his and his father's work while he sees to one final, more personal task. Hence why the game's theme song is called Legacy. Dante's depression started when he defeated Virgil 2 decades ago and was unable to stop him from falling into darkness. But when Virgil falls into hell this time, his brother is there to accompany him and, hopefully, both will come out of this experience complete. Dante now has the chance to redeem himself for his past failure to get through to his brother, and Virgil can learn to embrace his humanity through his journey with Dante. Dante's final mentorship role will be to teach his brother to embrace his humanity, as his father did, as his brother did, and as his son did as well. All this stuff makes DMC5 a great send-off to Dante and the series as a whole. We'd all rather see more of this world and these characters, especially after the ladies got so little to do in 5, but I can't say this game is a bad way for the series to end. I mean, the game even draws on secondary material you wouldn't expect. Virgil's new coat comes from Marvel vs. Capcom, and in that same game, Deadpool says,
"Next time, maybe you should let Nero do your fighting, Skippy." Yeah.
And what does Dante do in DMC5? Exactly that. And then, even more obscure than that, Virgil turning his weapon on himself to split himself into two beings that embody different aspects of himself that then recombine to make him stronger, is clearly flat out stolen from Kingdom Hearts. So it's not all great. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is DMC Special Edition Retrospective Foolish Motivation by Foxcade. It's a lengthy discussion of DMC's Special Edition releases and how Virgil is always weirdly confined to those editions.